Welcome everybody to another episode of Both Laugh, the Dying Scene Quarantine Chat Show. As always, I am your host, Jay Stone, and we're up to episode 58 of this fun little show that we started with no real plan in place a couple of years ago. We are now in the third calendar year of doing this, and this is another fun one. We've got another return guest. Our guest on this particular episode is Brian McTernan. You probably know him from having produced, let's say, if you've been in the punk and hardcore world for the last 20 years, he's probably produced, I would say 40 or 50% of the albums that are in your collection. He was in the band Battery for a long time back in the 1990s, and then really focused on producing. And we had a good chat a couple of years ago. He's got a new band called Be Well. So we talked about their initial album, The Weight and the Cost, a couple of years ago. Be Well has a new album that is due out later this month, later in May, on a new label, Revelation Records. They're certainly not a new label. You know Revelation Records. Again, if you've been in the punk and hardcore world for the last 30 years, you're very familiar with Revelation. Be Well will be putting out a news EP on Revelation. It's 6 songs. It's called Hello Sun. And allow me to be the first to tell you, if you haven't heard on social media already, that it is dynamite. I have said before and will continue to say that I am certainly not a hardcore kid by any stretch of the imagination. But Be Well is awesome. I love that band. I legitimately love that band. I love the way that Brian writes and records songs. I love the sort of emotion that he taps into. Maybe something about being now, I guess, in my mid 40s legally, and being a father and all of the sort of things that come along with that. And you know what? It just sort of dawned on me as I started rambling at the beginning of this introduction that it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so Brian is a very big proponent of talking about mental health and talking about what he had to do to sort of get to a better place, both for himself and for his wife and his daughter and for his career. Last time out, we talked about that he took a break from producing for a while, went into the contracting business, kind of lost focus of who he was and what was important to him. And so he found his way back into producing and then ultimately into Be Well. That has certainly continued over the last couple of years. His words are very honest. They can be, I suppose, seen as a little dark sometimes, but not dark for dark's sake. I think that this new EP does point out a little bit of the light that comes after a period of darkness like that. You'll have to listen to them in order to really tap into that. But yeah, check out Be Well. Check out Hello Sun. It's a dynamite album. They went to another level. There's some new sonic things that they do, and they sort of expanded the sound and the direction of the band. So we talked a lot about the recording of that album and the fact that the album has essentially been done for a year at this point or more, and was turned into the label close to a year ago. And because of vinyl delays and things like that, it is only now finally seeing the light of day. Like I said, it comes out, I think May 20th is the official date. So we talk a lot about Be Well. We talk a lot about the album. We talk a lot about his headspace now. And of course, Brian also recorded hot water music a lot back in the day, back in the early part of the 2000s. He recorded Caution, which is a lot of our favorite albums of all time, or certainly on that short list. And he recorded the new album after, I think it was 17 years of not working with them, between, I think he did the new What Next back in 2004, and then didn't work with them until now. And so to work with them during a pandemic, while Chris Wallard was sort of stepped back from the live performing piece, but still a writing part, while Chris Creswell was involved both in playing live and increasingly in the writing. And there's a pandemic, and so they're meeting over Zoom and flying to and from Florida and various other places to get the album done in a way that was safe. And everybody knows, obviously, that the new Hot Water Music album is dynamite. And so I do try to steer the conversation back to Be Well, because I feel like we were talking a lot about Hot Water Music, which is great, because Hot Water Music is one of my favorite bands of all time, and Brian is one of my favorite producers of all time. Um, but I did start to feel bad after a while that we spent maybe half of this interview talking about Hot Water Music and not talking about Be Well. But I think it's enjoyable nonetheless. So it's episode 58 of Both Laugh, and it features Brian McTernan, and it's coming up right after the intro music. Welcome, friends. It is episode 58 of Both Laugh, the Dying Scene Quarantine Chat Show. Joining us on this episode is Brian McTernan, who you may remember was the guest way back in episode 15, I think it was, which is just sort of revealing as to how long the pandemic has been going on, because now every episode I do is somebody that's making their return appearance. I'm fired up to have Brian back on. His band Be Well has a new EP called Hello Sun coming out in a couple of weeks, and it is dynamite, as you'd expect. Brian, thanks for coming back on. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
What's the official date? I think it's like May 20th.
May 20th. I'm actually like keeping my eye out. The records are meant to show up at my house today.
So it will be available physically.
It will
like
be
May 20th.
Actually physically, yes. So it will be that I just got the UPS update. So yep, we'll have them.
I thought it was going to be one of those things where, everybody can hear it digitally in May, and then you can get it in your stocking at Christmas time.
No,
it seems like that's the way it's been going.
You know, the crazy thing is we delivered the record. We delivered the record like July 1st. So, I mean, it took a long time. I mean, with the art, with everything, it was like turned in July 1st. And then, to be honest, I was really frustrated by the delays at first, but it kind of broke in our favor because we ended up getting some really great touring that doesn't start until right around the release. But it's a long time to wait for a record.
That's what, 10 and a half months by the time or almost 11 months by the time it comes out. I have heard stories of that it's been taking people that long, but that's wild. I've never actually I think personally talked to anybody that it took that long.
Yeah,
that's
and
wild.
I mean, I had really been hoping to have it out for the dates we did with Hot Water Music, Avail, Strike, like all of those dates. That would have been ideal, but I mean, it's just beyond our control. And I think that also we had Revelation and hits, and just trying to coordinate both things coming together was just tricky.
Was it a conscious decision to not release it digitally first and to wait until they both came out at the same time? Because I know a lot of people have been doing that, and I know that there's sort of pluses and minuses for doing it that way.
I would have been totally fine to do that. And I think that if I think on this final the final time it got pushed back, I just said, if it gets pushed back again, we're just putting it out. We're not putting the brakes on at this point. But I think that I think there's something exciting about like people get, the leading up to the release date, people starting to get the records and posting pictures. I don't know. I like that. And I mean, like, in contrast, it sucks. I still don't have a copy of the new Hot Water Music record.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't either.
So, I mean, and that's that. I mean, they had legitimate reasons to just go ahead and stick with their plan because they had all these dates and all this stuff going on. It's just a tough time. I mean, it's I don't know, man. I am not like a super hardcore vinyl junkie. I love having the record though and reading the lyrics, and I don't know. I don't mind the wait, and I'm really happy. It's going to be really nice to like have them. I'm hoping we have a show next weekend with Snapcase and Earth Crisis and Strife, and I'm hoping we just can sell them.
Yeah. I'm sort of the same way. I've certainly amassed a big vinyl collection, and I had a big CD collection, but I like physically buying something. I like the act of going to a record store and physically purchasing something. And like you said, flipping through liner notes and listening to an album, which is I'm super grateful to your press contact, Alexa, because not everybody sends out lyrics when they send out like a press copy of an album.
Yeah,
And the lyrics came with this one, and I was super happy about that.
that's
So
right. She's
shout out to
great.
Alexa, because
Yeah, she's
that's an
amazing.
awesome thing that not everybody does. But and I know that it's probably an old school thing, but I like that. There's something about consuming
Oh yeah.
the entirety of the music project.
I mean, I went and saw Kariki, I don't know how, I hope I'm not pronouncing that wrong, Ian Mackay's new band, and they were giving out lyric sheets at the door.
Really?
Yeah, to read at the show if you wanted to.
That's
And I thought
interesting.
that was so cool. I mean, it was like in a bookstore, and
I was
it
gonna
was
say, I
really
feel like it
cool.
would have to be seated or something, wouldn't it? Like it
I
would be
mean, I
weird to
don't
stand and read,
I
but
don't know. I don't know that a lot of people were actually sitting there reading it, but I think it was just the point that like the words matter,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and
That's such an Ian Mackay thing.
yeah,
I love it.
I definitely come from that school of like what really draws me to like punk and hardcore is the lyrics, the
Mhm.
relatability and the honesty of it all. So I mean, I appreciate that Alexa. I didn't know that she does that, but that's fantastic that she does. And I spent a lot of, I mean, I spent a lot of time writing the words and kind of push myself outside of my comfort zone in terms of like what I choose to share. So it's nice when it is seen, because it's hard to I mean, I think that's one of the travesties of like the digital age is, I mean, I used to every Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever it was when I was a kid, what records come out, I would go buy
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
records, whatever
Yep.
came out. By the time I got home, I had already read the lyrics
Right.
20 times, and I
Right.
knew exactly what song I wanted to listen to. And I was in the liner notes and the thanks lists, and that stuff just mattered. I mean, it's interesting too, as a producer, like, I mean, often people don't know who produced something, who mastered something, who did the artwork. I mean, it doesn't, sometimes the labels will fill that stuff out on Spotify, but it, not always,
Yeah, yeah.
and like which studios it was recorded at. Like I was always a junkie for all of that. And I always would, as like, I loved recording and production as a young music fan. And I would always gravitate, oh, where was that recorded? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I can kind of hear that room, and now I have no idea where anything was recorded
Yeah, yeah,
anymore.
yeah. It's funny that sort of two of those concepts came up in talking to Dave yesterday. One being the thing of going to an album to a record store on release day and actually buying the album when it came out. I have very like core memories of specific albums that I bought at specific record stores, but like at midnight, because they used to,
Yes, yes,
open
I
up at
remember
midnight,
that.
like
Yeah, yeah,
Newbury Comics, sometimes Tower Records did,
right.
or we had a store called Rocket Records in the town that I grew up in, and you could go down at midnight. They'd stay open till like 12:30, and that's when you could get all the new stuff. And I have very specific memories of like where
Yeah,
I bought certain albums along the
yeah,
way, and I still try to do that as much as possible, except that you
right.
can't actually get a physical album the day it comes out anymore because you
Yeah,
never know. Uh,
yeah,
but that and trying to, figure out where something was recorded
right.
is such a core thing to the way that I don't know if it's a generational thing, and maybe we were the last generation to actually do it, but to pay attention to that stuff, to pay attention to a room that something was recorded in,
Yeah, well,
or who produced it.
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is I kind of feel like, at least, and I don't know how much it is this way anymore because now there's so many studios, but I feel like if you look at really like back at any really healthy, like important punk hardcore scene, there was always kind of like a studio where everybody like that, like in DC, in Ear, and in Boston, and when it was Fort Apache, and
Right.
Brett Gerwitz, I can't, the name escape, West, whatever his studio
Westlake.
was,
Yeah.
Westlake, for the record, in Southern California, where like since all the, the Southern California,
Yeah. Yeah.
my studio, and when I was coming up, like, I mean, I think that stuff is cool and it's important, and if I would check things out on that basis alone, like who produced it, where they record. And now I don't even know. Probably a lot of things are recorded in like some dude's bedroom, too.
Well,
so.
yeah. And
there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
No, you can do that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the people will record albums digitally and never be in the same room as their band.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird thing. I mean, I understand it for writing purposes, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but to record an album that way with other people, it's just bizarre.
Yeah, there've been a lot of weird things like in my like that is a thing that happens. There's a lot more like virtually, people are one person, like I do a lot of mixing for people. So it's like, oh, the drummer sends me his tracks. So basically I'm kind of compiling it the first time the band's ever even hearing it together as when once I'm sending it to them. It's just, it's a weird thing. But I mean, I think it's freeing, I think that it's interesting. When I was coming up, there were studios, but there weren't a lot of studios that like people that came from my world ran or so, I just remember you used to have to go to the studio and you'd have to like bring CDs to play for the engineer. Like, this is what I wanted it to sound like. And I think it is cool that there are so many people that can do great, home recordings. There's so many like, not cheap studios, but affordable places where you can go, where someone understands where you're coming from without you having to explain it to them. So
did you guys write this? I mean, I assume it wasn't recently, because I didn't realize though that you were basically done with the album almost a year ago, but did you write it on the heels of The Weight and the Cost? Like what was the time gap in between?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly, because certain songs like Hello Sun was actually the first song that was written for the band, period.
Oh, wow.
And we recorded it for The Weight and the Cost. And there were some things with the lyrics that I changed that I wasn't in love with. And it just didn't come out the way that I heard it in my head. And so we just kept working on it and tweaking it. And then with this batch of songs, it just ended up really fitting. But since the beginning of the band, I have just tried to write and not think about it in terms of like I'm writing for a record. I am just writing because it's how I choose to live my life. Right. It's therapeutic. It's fun. It's like a good motivator to kind of just stay, like kind of exercise that muscle, and it's not like everything I write is a song, but I kind of I'm constantly compiling, journaling thoughts and like just sitting down with my phone and laying down riff ideas. And then when I have time or when we can get together, I'll just kind of scroll through. And the funny thing is my process is actually, if I hear a similar idea pop up more than a few times, then I'll go, okay, this seems like something I'm trying, and I'll take that and then kind of develop it. So it with this stuff, it was really hard to get together. So I was like demoing a lot of stuff and sending it to the guys virtually. And then we would get together and jam on it. But I think what I think a lot of people don't know, because I've had people say, oh, wow, it's so soon. Well, the thing about it is that The Weight and the Cost was done for a long time before it came out.
Right.
So it was like, it was, that record was recorded in like 2018. So it's like,
God.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a really like, that got pushed back because of, it got pushed back initially by like finding the right label. And then it got pushed back again because of the pandemic. And I remember at the time, everybody being like, yeah, we'll push it back. So, like 2 or 3 months and then you can tour. And like, who fucking could have ever thought that this was going to be
seriously
going on, like it is now. I mean,
really, to be having conversations with people about the second album that's come out since the pandemic started.
Right.
It's like, and it's just here. Like, I feel like this is just what it's going to be for the next however many years at this point. I know
Yeah.
there was a meme that went around in the early days of the pandemic, and it was like somebody referenced 2020, and then the follow up to it was like, "Oh, I remember 2020. That was pandemic year one," and everybody was like, "You mean year one?" And here we are
Right.
2 years later, and we
I
got to,
know. And it's crazy. It's like I mean, the good thing that came out of the pandemic for me is that, well, for Be Well is I wrote and wrote. I have like, I mean, so much material, and like we were able to sneak in some shows, and luckily none of us got sick. I
right.
did get COVID over Christmas, and strangely, I'm kind of relieved that I did, because I was really freaked out about it, and now it's
Yeah,
like it sucked, but it was like was you
yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
I mean, like my wife is at I just took her to the rapid care. She's got some, it's not COVID, it's something else, and it's way worse than when she had COVID. So
Oh,
I mean,
really?
I'm not saying COVID's like not, it's something to take seriously, and I take it seriously. It's just like before I had it, I was really freaked out about it, and after having it, it's kind of like that sucked, but like, you know,
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do it again, but
I wouldn't want to do it. The worst thing was losing my taste. That was so freaky.
yeah.
Yeah, that was
Did
like
it come back?
it did, yeah, but it took a while. Everything just tasted like aluminum. It was just super
Oh,
weird. It was a weird,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
it was a weird thing. But then, I was able to make a couple of records during that time and travel. And I mean, I don't know. The thing is, playing shows, one of my least favorite things about the COVID stuff is I don't really like, I love to play and then hang with people,
Right,
but it's not really fair to my bandmates or the other bands on tour to really be out
right,
mingling,
right.
because you very well could, get sick and bring it back, and you could ruin the whole tour for everybody. So
Yeah, and it's for whatever reason, it's not like the flu in that, like, people would play with the flu. People would play when you're sick or whatever, but I feel like
right,
when it's COVID and it's so catchy, it's like you have to shut shit down for a week or whatever. But if you're a band that doesn't do that as your primary means of income, right? And so you take your week vacation to go do a run through the East Coast or whatever and get COVID on day one and then have to sit out the whole thing.
yeah,
I don't know how people do it. It's been weird going back to shows, I
yeah.
think, like from this side, but I don't know how you guys do it, honestly.
Yeah, I think that here, I mean, we're lucky because like a lot of the touring we've done has been like runs of 4 or 5 dates. So it's
Yeah,
kind of like the risk is limited. I think that we had to cancel a European tour, like a 3.5 week tour, and I was really worried about that, because the thing about Europe is like you get over there, you have to print all the merch, you have all the plane tickets, you have the transportation, you have the backline, and then you run the risk of like having to quarantine for 2 weeks there,
yep,
miss all the dates,
yep,
or get through most of it. I mean, I know a lot of bands that this has financially been just ruinous for them, and even for us. I mean, we're about to head out on a full US tour with Newfound Glory and 4 Years Strong, and we just have to be really conservative about what we order for merch, because
yeah,
you don't want to get stuck with
yeah,
5 weeks worth of tour or whatever it is. So
right.
it's a weird
Yeah,
time.
a buddy of mine, speaking of hot water, a buddy of mine is on tour with Chuck in Europe right now. And I think he
Oh,
played Jesse Ahern, and he played, I think, the first date he was supposed to do and got COVID. So
oh,
he had to miss, like, I want to say it was like a week's worth of dates, but they're in Europe. So it's not like, so he had to somehow quarantine in like Belfast. But
oh my
but
God.
Chuck and the other people were in, I don't know, Germany or something. And I can't, I don't know how you coordinate that
That,
stuff.
that that tour looks like it's going awesome.
Yeah.
The photos look, I mean, it's hard to tell, but
Of course, I don't know what happened yesterday. There was a picture of a broken window in a van with Jesse on the other side. So
yeah, I don't.
I didn't get that story yet.
Yeah, but that looks like it's fun. Yeah, the funny thing is, talking about like the Zoom and doing I did help with the new Hot Water music record, and we did like 80% of the pre-production this way.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. So I talked to Jason in the lead up to the last Hot Water album, and he mentioned that like having regular Zoom sessions. Now I'm somebody who uses Zoom for work, and then we have breakout rooms, and so you meet with different therapists and counselors and whatever. But I never dawned on me that bands would actually be writing material that way and getting into their little Zoom breakout rooms and working on ideas. And
Well,
that's fascinating.
it was really interesting. It was great. What we did was I went down several times and like worked with the guys as they kind of came up with ideas, and then everybody was like, we had like a shared Dropbox, so everybody was putting song ideas in. So we weren't getting on Zoom and like being like, hey, I have a riff.
Yeah.
It was more like, okay, we kind of like brainstormed like a ton of ideas. We had like a ton of stuff, and then we would have like a Thursday night Zoom with everybody.
Yeah.
And then we would have, we called it the adult Zoom with a select group on like a Monday early, and we would just sit around with like acoustic guitars. Like on the Thursday night Zoom, we would talk about like, what song do we want to approach next? And then on Monday, we would sit around, and it was like, Jason would have his bass, I'd have an acoustic, and then Cresswell would be like taking notes, and he's very on top of things.
He's such a professional. Yeah,
he is. And then Cresswell would, we would like, work on the arrangement, like, oh, would it be cool if, whatever, this chord went here? And then he would take notes, and then he would record a scratch guitar track of the new arrangement, send it to George played drums, send it to Jason played bass, send it to whoever else, and then they'd send it all back to me, and I would make, it was a little weird at first, but it was great. And when we finally were able to get together in person again, like all of us together, so much work had been done that instead of it being like 2 weeks of sussing all this out, it was really just like getting comfortable playing the stuff, and it was really great.
Did you record that one down at Black Bear or Engage?
Yeah, we did. Okay. Yeah, and actually we recorded it like half at Black Bear and half at my Airbnb. So I was we had this great Jason got us a great, like a big like Airbnb, like a whole house that Cresswell and I stayed in, and I brought like a Pro Tools rig and some nice gear, and we just set up like a vocal guitar overdub station at the house. Wow. And it was great. I mean, it was like, and so we kind of did, and the nice thing is Ryan, who owns Black Bear and has worked on several records, he's amazing. I mean, he's like super talented. So it was like, it makes more sense to divvy up responsibilities here, so I focused on like a lot of the leads and the vocals and the harmonies and stuff. And like I was there for the drum and bass tracking, but then he really worked with Cresswell and Wallard on like the rhythm guitar stuff. And while I was at the house working, and then I would go cruise over there and check it out. It was a really cool process. And what it did was it bought us like essentially 2 or 3 extra weeks of time, because it wasn't like a budget thing. It's like it's really hard, as you get older, to be away for that long. Like I couldn't have been there much longer. I know Chuck couldn't have been there much longer. So it was really cool. And Cresswell, it's on so many levels, like the introduction to him, like creatively, vibe wise, he's just such a fun, positive, talented, but also just, he's very like studious and on top of things. So it's like, it's like, if you ask for something from him, it's like, you're going to get it like exactly when you're supposed to get it, So it was a really cool experience.
That's refreshing for somebody in the punk community, and somebody that's like he's not really a millennial, but he's significantly younger than like you or I or the rest of those guys. It's nice that he's like
Yeah.
super on task and focused and super professional and talented. And
Yeah, and all those guys are on it. Like Jason is very, very on top
yeah,
of things as well. But it was really nice to have like, you know, like Waller and Chuck are amazing, but you know, they're like, you know, they march to the beat of their own drum, you know.
absolutely true.
And as they should,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, they've earned that at this point.
Absolutely. So Cresswell on every level was just a welcome addition. And also like, I mean, I've known those guys for a very long time, and I didn't know Ryan and Cresswell. So I mean, I feel like not only did we end up with like a record, amazing record, I'm very proud of, but like Ryan and Cresswell, like I feel like I made two amazing friends. Like they're really special people, and they were, you know, I have so many memories of the, you know, it would be like me and Cresswell, I'm in like my pajamas, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, it's like somebody has an idea, like, oh, let's lay that down, you know what I mean? Like we worked hard, you know, and I'm excited about the record. I was thrilled for them that it was so well received. I mean, I felt like we've always had like good synergy and chemistry, like all of us, you know.
Yeah.
But you never know when you get. We hadn't worked together in what 16 years,
right?
17 years or whatever it was, and so you just never know how it's going to be, and it was amazing. It was great.
Yeah, I talked to Cresswell briefly after the show up here in Boston, and I said, oh, you know, enjoy Crossroads. I said, say hi to Andy Diamond. We'll see you Saturday. He's like, yeah, I've never met Andy Diamond before. And it sort of like caught me off guard because I feel like everybody knows Andy Diamond. He's just like, he's got his tentacles everywhere, and he's such a dynamic person. And so I texted Cresswell after those shows. I said, so you met Andy? He's like, dude, I didn't stop laughing all week. It was amazing.
Yeah. He's, you know, it's funny you say that. Like, oh, I love Andy Diamond, but he's one of the first people that ever gave Be Well a shot. He put us on the Boy Sets Fire show. Like our second or third show was a show he booked, and we hit it off immediately. And but I remember my older brother, was like, oh, did Andy book that show? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, you know him? He's like, you don't know him?
Yeah,
like,
right.
He was just shocked that
I always figure I'm so far down like the whatever totem pole in punk rock that like if I know somebody, everybody must know them.
Yeah, he's great. And we talk a lot, you know, like we text and talk on the phone, and he's a sweetheart.
Do you have a similar sort of writing style when it comes to Be Well that you sort of worked with Hot Water on? I mean, do you guys all get together, or do you have your weekly Zoom meetings or whatever too? I don't know. I don't remember exactly how spread out you are.
No, I think that like typically I will sketch out a song, you know, pretty thoroughly before I send it to the guys. I mean, I typically will have a lot of material that they haven't heard yet, and I try not super overwhelm them, because for me the hard thing is that even if I love the music or I love the riffs, or if the lyrics aren't coming for something, I don't want to send it I don't want to, it's never going to work if I'm not, it's not going to be a Be Well song if
it's not the whole package,
if it's not connecting on that level for me. So it's like, you know, there's tons of songs, and sometimes those songs end up, you know, getting adopted by other bands or other things like that too. But no, our process is a little bit more like, I kind of like mostly sift it out and then send it to the guys and start getting feedback that way, and then we'll get together and jam on things. But usually I'm sending them something that is like got vocals, already often has like, you know, kind of programmed drums. It's like a song, you know. And then they put their touches on it.
Were you still writing that much before Be Well really took off?
No, I haven't.
Or has it really been since like this project got steam?
I hadn't written a song from 1999 to 2017.
That's wild.
I mean, I wrote with bands.
Yeah.
In this, but that's a very different, you know, like there are some bands that I function as like a producer, but there's other bands I actually like write songs with. We'll send riffs, we'll kind of correspond in that way. But that's very, very different than like, you know, sitting down and like writing a song and writing the lyrics. And so, I mean, I think it's one of the reasons it worked, in a sense that like, I think if I had a lot to say, I guess.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
And also, I kind of was like almost like in a cryogenic chamber for 20 years. So it wasn't like I was out there like just, you know, writing and nothing was coming of it. It was just kind of like I was producing records and I just was not writing my own material. And once I started writing again, that's when it was like, wow, how did I ever not do this? Like I really need, I think it's like, it isn't just like, I think sometimes people will listen to Be Well and be like, oh, writing those words must be therapeutic. It's really not that. It's really like the idea of just the creation process is really like good. In the same way that like going on a run or doing yoga or something like that, it's like just kind of like opens you up. If I'm super tense, I'm freaking out, I'm whatever. By the time I'm like, I just need something to focus on that isn't the shit in my head. And that's what music has always been for me. So it's like, whether it's writing it or listening to it. And the interesting thing is, the more I write, the more I want to listen to music.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like, but that's the other thing. When I was producing records, when you're in the studio 12 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week, I mean, I did not want to listen to music. I didn't want to leave the studio. You know, I listen to a lot of like sports talk radio.
Right.
You know? Right. But now it's like, I literally am listening to music. Like, you know, I take my dogs out for hours and just listen to music. And it's just so amazing. I mean, it's just, music's amazing because it just can take you, I can, like, a song will come on and you can like smell the air, you know, when, you know, it like scratches so many itches for me.
And so you feel more connected to it now that you're actually writing it again for your own project?
I feel more connected to it for sure. And honestly, it helped. Even with like the production and the mixing and things like that. I mean, I think like it kind of like, one of the reasons I took a break from producing records for a period of time was I started to feel burnt out, and I started like losing sight of why it mattered. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, especially as like, I was never motivated by like record sales or budgets or anything like that. It's just that as it was like, records were less big and there was less, and it was like harder to make a living doing, like, a lot of things came together, and it was like bands were younger. I didn't feel as connected to them.
That's a weird thing too. Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird. And I have my daughter, and I just kind of felt like I'm not that happy, and it's kind of not fair to these bands. And I didn't have that, like, I started to lose that, like, oh, this is just this magical thing I get to do. And so the interesting thing for me now is like, I can see so directly the effect that making these records and writing this music and of my own has on me, and how important it is to me. And it's kind of such a good reminder that like, when I'm like in the studio with Hot Water Music, it's not just like, it is like their livelihood. I mean, it's really matters. It's important. And it matters. It matters to them professionally. It matters to them creatively and soulfully, the way I'm saying it helps me. And it really has kind of like like established like that, like, wow, this is fucking magic. And I'm really lucky to get to do this. This isn't just like a pain in the ass with shitty hours where I don't make money. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, this matters. People care. I get to shepherd this process for these people that I really love, who have something to say that people care about. And that's way cooler than I mean, it's the coolest thing in the world. I think, it's.
Yeah, I think that music obviously matters to those guys, but I think that something you just sort of touched on is that music matters to a lot of people. Like hot water
Yes.
music's music, hot water music's music. Yeah, that came out right. Matters to a lot of people, like to a
Right.
legion of people. Strike
Yeah.
Anywhere's music matters to a legion of people.
100%. Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, I feel like Be Well is headed in that direction. I feel like Be Well is a band that has kind of reinvigorated a lot of people, myself included. And I've said this before that like I certainly wasn't a hardcore kid by any stretch of the imagination, but there are a few sort of bands that have always been touchstones, and it's really interesting and neat to have a band when you're on the other side of 40 to have like
Right.
a new band that you get
Yeah.
excited about in the scene, and
Yeah.
like
I appreciate that.
that doesn't happen.
I,
But I feel like your music starting to matter, and I think it did right from the rip, really, to a lot of people.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that. The thing that I love about the band is that I love the way people love the band. You know what I mean? Like I don't really foresee that we're going to become some huge band, and it's not something we aspire to do or even that I would want in my life. But it's so cool, like to work so hard on something and see people really connect with it. And it's that is, I think most of the bands that I love never got huge. I mean, I guess Hot Water is kind of huge. Strike Anywhere is kind of, they're big bands, but not like mainstream, like crazy.
Yeah, they played
big,
two
but-
nights at Crossroads. Like, I mean, which
Right,
is great,
like-
but it's, it's not 17,000 kids. It's like 500 really, really passionate kids.
But the thing about it is like, the thing is the way, like like the way people love Hot Water music, it's unlike anything else. It's like that,
Yeah.
it's its own thing. And and it's deserved, like they do something special. They're special people. And I think with Be Well, I definitely would rather have like 10 people that fucking totally get it and totally love it than 10,000 who don't even know who we are, who just think it's like a catchy song on the Spotify.
Because somebody did a TikTok about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny actually how it is, because it's like, you look at these, like, I have a friend that is in a band that they are Spotify. They have like several songs that have like 40, 50 million plays, but they couldn't draw like 100 people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just a very strange time. And the thing with Be Well that's cool is that I like we're a good size, and that like I have a personal connection with a lot of people that really love the band too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I like that. It's like, oh, I see, someone, like we can respond to every comment and every message.
Right.
And like, I like that. I mean, that's not like, like we're a bunch of like people that just love punk and hardcore and love playing music. So it's like, I don't know. I feel very lucky to have this opportunity, and also then, I mean, I'm sure you can understand, but getting to like go out and play with Strike Anywhere and Hot Water Music was just, I mean, I don't know, that group of people, like what they've meant to me in my life on a personal level is hard to describe, I mean, as people and as bands. I mean, those are actually like two of my all-time favorite bands in the world that I just happen to get to help make records for,
And you get to go to Europe with Hot Water and Sam I Am, which is another, to me, one of those bands. I don't know how Sam I Am didn't get massive, because I feel like all the people that like music love Sam I Am. They're sort of like a Fugazi kind of band. Like Fugazi could have been huge, but they weren't. Sam I Am should have been huge, but they weren't. But people that like music, like Andy Diamond, Sam I Am his favorite band. And Boy Sets Fire, like the shows that you've been able to play, like they're not just like those are massive bills.
Yeah, Europe is going to be awesome. I love Sam. I don't know those guys. I've met Chad, who in Gainesville, and I've emailed with Sergi, but I don't know those guys. But they are like one of my favorite. I mean, I can't even believe we get to do that tour. It's like,
Right.
it's like insane. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think we have benefited in a sense from, I think that there are not a lot of newer bands that are older people, right?
That's valid. Yeah.
And so I think that there is like, I'm not saying I'm not speaking for Avail or Hot Water Music or Sam I Am, but I think that there's sometimes like you want to bring a newer band on tour, but maybe not 18-year-olds.
You don't want to show them the ropes when you're on the other side of 40. Yeah.
Right. Well, and also that like, we don't make them look old.
Fair enough.
So no, I mean, I don't know. It's a real treat. And, I think that it's, we like everybody in Be Well has just been involved in the music scene for a long time. So I think there's like, a little bit of it that is like, like it's kind of like, oh, cool. Like, that sounds like they kind of know that we'll get along, because that's a big part of touring too. But one of the coolest things that came was when we did the dates with Hot Water and Tim Barry. I had never met Tim Barry, which blows my mind because I love Avail. I love Tim Barry. We have so many friends in common. I've always looked up to him. I grew up in DC, so it's like Avail was
right.
Of Richmond, DC. We're like not that close, but kind of like similar scenes. And we I kind of assumed we got those Avail dates just because somebody knew somebody who knew somebody, whatever it was. And because when we got the offer to do the Avail dates, I said to Jay, I thought immediately, oh, that must be Hot Water got us. And Jason was like, wait, what? And it was, but we played in Detroit and we got off, and Tim pulled me aside and said, hey man, I just want to let you know, like, it's so cool that I know all you guys, but when Avail decided to have Be Well, add Be Well to the dates, we didn't know anything about who you guys were. Our booking agent sent the video for Confessional and said, this, you should really consider this band. So he had no idea. And so we're sound checking at the Auto Bar, and he walks in and is like, wait, that's Mike from Dark Sour, and that's this guy from Bad. Like he was just like,
funny.
He had no idea. And honestly, I will say this about him. I typically really shy away from trying to meet people that I really look up to, because I've had records ruined by meeting the people that made them.
Same. Same.
Tim Barry did the exact opposite for me. Like Tim Barry, like I didn't think I could love Avail more, but his just like everything about him, like his perspective, his like warmth, his like just, I don't know, how like kind and supportive, and like, I literally felt like, God, this guy is like everything. It's like, it was a whole, and it was just like, I got to geek out with him about, like Thomas from Strict Anywhere and Taylor from Four Walls Falling. And we just have a lot of, for somebody you never met, it's like amazing how many like of our roots kind of like intertwine,
That's another guy that I'm surprised that if I know somebody, I just figure everybody knows them. But I loved him. He's an amazing person. And the fact that not only does he know who I am, but he'll pick my brain about things from time to time and have me work on things with him. And I'm like, wait, why?
Yeah.
Me? Are you sure?
he's amazing. And I feel like really like one of the cool, getting to meet him was a big deal for me. And he was, he was just a great dude. And then Avail, his solo stuff was amazing, and Avail was so good. It's like so many times I'll see older bands and I'm just like, come on guys. Like, and they were just as different than back in the day, but just as good or better. Like his vocals are so good, they play so well, and they were so freaking nice to us.
Yeah.
And that sometimes you play with bands and they don't even acknowledge your presence.
Oh, sure.
Those guys watched from the stage. Tim would come in and, wait, you guys don't have any this back here. Let me bring you some more, you know. It was very cool.
I got to see them on my 40th birthday. That the Over the James reunion was on up here, was my 40th birthday, and that's like the best 40th birthday present you could get.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
It's sort of getting back to the idea of Be Well developing its own following of people who think that it's a really important band. There's been obviously people with tattoos of your words on them now, like words over chords especially, which is did that ever happen in the Battery days? Like, do you remember that before? And how does that land on you when you see your words carved into somebody's arm?
It's so cool. It's really cool. I mean, yeah, it was not, you know, I don't know. I think that, I don't know whether it wasn't a thing. I think I remember one guy in Sweden came up and Battery had a song called For the Rejected by the Rejected. And he had that like across his chest.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was kind of freaked me out. Like, whoa.
Right.
And, but there's, I mean, not only like there are a lot of Be Well tattoos, and actually it blows my mind, but Joe Foster from Ignite and tons of band like sang backups on 7 Seconds records and stuff. He's got a Be Well tattoo on his hand.
Wow.
And that like blew my mind.
Yeah.
It was just like, it's not like he sent me a picture. It's like he posted on Instagram, you know, and it was just like, holy shit. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I think it's cool. I think it means a lot to me that people, I think that when The Wit and the Cost came out, for sure, I kind of felt like people are going to think I'm insane. This is going to be, you know, I was, you know, it's a collection of the most kind of isolated feelings. And I never would have dreamt that it would make me feel closer to humanity. You know what I mean?
That's a really interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
And I mean, I also, you know, I mean, just knowing, I mean, I think it's the feeling that you're alone that makes having those feelings so much harder. I think if you know, like, this is something a lot of people go through, it's a lot easier to not to kind of get through it, I think, for sure. So for me, it's kind of like, wow, like, this is amazing that, like, it sucks that so many people that are having a hard time, but it's also like, we're not alone. We definitely aren't alone. And I also think it's cool because I think that you don't, it's really interesting to me what people take on, like, I kind of know what I was writing about with Any Given Thing, but it's like people will interpret it through the lens of what is going on in their life. And it's like, definitely, you know, it's like plenty of people that aren't depressed, you know, or don't struggle with mental illness, find, you know, everybody has like regrets and disappointments and fears, and especially with their children, you know. And it's been really like touching to see people like find things that I wrote so relatable and meaningful to them. You know?
Yeah. And I think you have a way of writing it that is very unique, I guess. And so that it really, I mean, there's a lot of people who obviously write songs about being alone and vulnerable and isolated and depressed and things like that. But I think you have a way of actually wording some of those things and the positive side too. And we can talk about that a little bit, but I think Hello Sun actually has some brighter moments on it and some sort of like hope for the future moments on it. But you have a way of writing that stuff that seems very, it's unique, but it's also immediately relatable.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I think, I think that one of the best things that I think, I definitely had some concerns with The Weight and the Cost, that, like, to me, it wasn't this like misery album, like super depressing album. I mean, it was like, these are feelings, but it's like getting them out is a positive. And I really appreciate that that is how people took it, which is
Yeah.
like, for a lot of people, Be Well is a positive thing in their life. Like music and the message and those things are like, it's not just this, it's not like, you know, like I remember when I was like younger and people be into like goth or Marilyn Man,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and it's just depressing. So it's like, it could have gone either way. And
Yeah.
I am pleased that people, you know, were found it to be uplifting. And I think that feeling of like, oh, someone is saying something that I have felt many times before is a positive. It's like, even though the thing that's being said is
Right.
hard, the fact that it's being said, that it's being shared, and you're seeing other people. So it's like, I am saying this thing, someone else is responding by saying, like, I feel the same way. And someone else is seeing that and going, wow, there's a lot of us here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's cool. And then I think with the new stuff, I think it's, you know, it's content wise is similar. It's just from a completely different vantage point. I think.
Mhm.
I think that like, if I was being honest, there were times when I was writing The Weight and the Cost that I was like a little bit afraid of the things I was feeling. Like I kind of felt like, if I allow myself to like think this fully, the thing I'm thinking, that's like scary, you know? And I don't feel that way at all anymore. So it's like, I really have continued to struggle with depression. But I can see it now, and I know what it is, and I know that it isn't terminal. You know, I know that like, there are people that love me. I'm able to like feel that and see that in a way that I didn't before. And I also feel like I shared the thing I was most afraid to share, and nobody like ran away, you know? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Right.
big. That's like, you know, it's a big deal. And it's interesting because it's like, I like, it's interesting because it's not like I'm sitting around talking to my friends all the time about like my mental health. but
Right.
but what has been really touching for me is, I think that since the record came out, and I think since people have heard me talk about the things that surrounded starting to do this again, I have noticed that my friends check in a lot more,
Oh, that's
you
great.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, if someone doesn't hear from me for a little while, you know, I'll get a text like, "Hey bud, just checking in,"
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's cool. And it's like, and I think my situation was exacerbated by the fact that when you're the producer, when that's your role you kind of have to you're kind of in a leadership role. So I think people's instinct is not to like, oh, we haven't heard from Brian in a while, like he's probably off, you know, doing some
Yeah.
shit,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Right. Right.
Where I think now people realize like, oh, like that's Brian in the producer chair, Brian in the like dad, life, human friend chair, struggles like we do, and we'll check. And
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
because I mean, you don't check in with your boss at work,
right.
right, to see how your boss is. That's because there's
Yeah.
that barrier in that relationship. But
Yeah. So it's been cool. And it's just been, you know, there's other things that are interesting. It's just like, my daughter just like gets such a kick out of the band, you know. I
yeah,
sometimes worry because she loves wearing like Be Well t-shirts to school.
yeah,
I worry that she might get like teased, you know. But so far so good.
yeah. I was gonna ask, does she? Because I think your daughter and my daughter are around the same age. Is there a scene at her school? Like, are kids starting to get into like punk
Well,
music, hardcore music?
her not her friend group, but the older kids, like Turnstile is like
Oh yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
big deal. And actually it was really cool. Like those guys gave her a t-shirt, and she wore it to school one day. And a bunch of the older kids came over like, how do you know Turnstile? And she's like, oh, my dad produced a record for them. And they were like, what? You
Right,
know,
right.
because we're in Baltimore, so it's like they're big everywhere, but here
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
you know, it's a big deal. So she gets a kick out of it. And she also like the record comes out today, but I was working on the new Praise record, and it was during the pandemic, and Andy, the singer, would come over once a week to work on vocals, and she's just so cute. She'll wear her Praise shirt and she'll talk to her friends about like her friend Andy. You know,
That's awesome.
So it's cool. I wish she was like into more like punk and hardcore, because I think that she's like struggling a bit socially, and I think that I did, and I think that punk and hardcore for me was the thing that made me feel like, hey, being a little bit of an outcast is cool. You know what I mean? Like, like I don't want to be a part of that thing. Like anyway, you know what I mean? Where I feel like if she was listening to songs that like talked about those things, it might help her, you know, understand the things that she's feeling that she isn't able to fully, you know, express. But she listens to just show tunes and Broadway and yeah. So she's big into acting, and she takes singing lessons and goes to like acting camp. She's like into like theater. So that's what she listens to. But I got to get her hip to some like,
boy, man, when I mean, it used to be the thing that punk was the way you rebelled against what your parents listened to. And so I guess the opposite, like the younger kids now, they got to rebel by listening to Hamilton soundtrack.
Yeah.
Which my kid, I think, has the Hamilton soundtrack memorized.
Yeah. So she's funny, but she loves doing the band. And the funny thing is, when I'm writing, I must have like a different energy, because she just loves to be around me when I'm writing. So she'll come in to like my studio room where I'm working on things, and she'll sit on the floor, put headphones in, and like draw or like, you know, play some, but there must be something about like the way I am when I'm doing that she finds comforting.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So it's really interesting. And most of the rest of my life, she's like, Dad, get out of here.
Yeah, right.
Leave me alone.
Is there stuff that you work on and she'll actually look up and be like, oh, that's really cool? And is that going to be, or if it hasn't happened, is that going to be like a groundbreaking moment when it does?
No, she's never done that. But I know she thinks it's cool because it's because of her other, you know, her other actions. Yeah. And then, I mean, she grew up, my wife loves, you know, Hot Water and Dave Haas and, you know, Strike Any, like, so that's just been the soundtrack of her life. And so I think you're right, which is kind of like, she's like, wants to be into something different than what we're into. But the other thing is, if Trusty Chords is on, she knows every word. So it's like, you know,
Trusty Chords is the ringtone on my phone. And so every time, if the song will come on, if I'm cooking dinner or whatever, she'll be like, Dad, phone's ringing.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Of course, I had to have Chuck call me once when I was doing an actual interview, and sort of like the fact that it's your phone blinks Chuck Reagan while Trusty Chords is playing. I'm like, this is a really weird moment.
That's so funny, man. Talk about Chris Wallard on the new Hot Water. It's like I am so proud of him. Yeah. You know, like I think that you know, for a guy like that, I mean, he's like one of my favorite lyricists in the world. I think all the time about Caution, in that there are very few, you know, that is a record where I felt like I couldn't have known them better before we made that. You know, we'd been friends for a long time. We'd made records together, and we made that record and we finished it, and I was listening to it and listening to the lyrics, and I thought like, wow, these are such important lyrics that like, I know this person I love deeply in a whole new way because of it, you know. And also kind of like, you realize with what came for Chris, with like the struggles he's had, that he was telling us everything we needed to know that was coming. You know what I mean?
I had that very thought in listening to the new record and the last Ship Thieves record probably too, but I think you're exactly right. I came to that sort of thought in listening to the new record too, and then when you go back and listen to the old stuff, you're like, oh yeah, like there might've been a roadmap here.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is, I think he was a little bit nervous, you know, about this new one. I mean, that's like you're introducing Cresswell, who he doesn't know the way all these other guys, who is the guy that goes out and sings Chris Waller's songs at the shows. And I mean, to be able to get to see Chris Waller and Chris Cresswell, just their synergy and the kind of mutual respect was just unbelievable. Like it was just, I mean, it was just magic. And even with not just with like Cresswell and Waller, like really worked in tandem on all the guitar stuff, but like I remember when we did, there's the song that Cresswell sings lead on the record, which is amazing. And we were kind of like working on like the approach and like how this is going to fit or whether it's going to fit. And Chris Waller just came in, and it was like, I was trying to translate something to Cresswell that I think he was having a hard time hearing about, like what I felt like the record needed and what he could bring with this song that the record was missing. And I think it was like, to be Chris Cresswell and all of a sudden be singing lead vocals on a fucking Hot Water. It's a lot. And it was so cool because all of a sudden it was like, we're trying to have this conversation, and it wasn't tense, but it was emotional. Right. And Chris Waller walked in and just gave this, like, literally, I wish I had videotaped it. It was like a TED talk. And Cresswell and I sat there like just in awe as he just like laid it out in a way I never could have. And it was like, there were some tears, but like of joy, of like mutual love and respect. And it was just like, okay, yeah, we did it. It was just really cool. I mean,
to have been a fly on the wall.
Oh man, it was very special. It was a moment it was a moment in, that I'll remember forever, because because of how much I love both of them. And it, like, having them both, I feel like Cresswell coming into the fold is, I think that people get it wrong. Like, people are like, where's Waller? Like, I don't think they get that, like, Cresswell is the thing that it actually keeps Waller being able to contribute, because there aren't a lot of guys that are going to want to come in, like, sing all this other guy's songs and then go and make a record and have that guy continue to sing songs. It's that, like, love and respect, and that kind of like Cresswell and Waller having such a good vibe and relationship is what enables Cresswell to be in the band and Waller to be able to continue to be such a big part of it.
And frankly, allows Hot Water to be Hot Water in 2022.
100%. Yeah. Because I don't think that like, I get really, I don't know. I'm so tempted to respond to people's comments, which never helps, but I feel protective of those guys. And I also think that, like, I don't think people get Waller is not going to come back and tour with Hot Water.
Yeah, right.
It's over. That phase is over. But what you do get is fucking Waller on Feel the Void.
Yeah.
Writing songs that you get to listen to for the rest of your life.
Right.
So we're lucky for that. Right. And the reason that is still able to happen is because Chris Cresswell can go out and tour with them and is so fucking good. And it's just all a positive thing. And so I get really, like, and the band shouldn't have to keep explaining this to everyone. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, this is how it is. This is the new era. And I think it's a good thing. I don't think it's a bad, it's a positive for everybody. And, like, people, if you don't like it, then too bad, then don't come. But just trolling them online is just like,
yeah, I don't know why people do it. And I don't think that people that go to see them nowadays, maybe there was a little weirdness the first year, but I still feel like everybody is like, I feel like the most common comment that I read after the first few live shows in 2017, whatever, were that, like, I miss Waller, but Cresswell's pretty fucking good. Like, there's sort of a common thread that, like, I miss Waller, but Cresswell's awesome.
I mean, I miss Waller too.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But
And that's okay.
I love seeing Cresswell. So
Yeah.
it is. I think there's a new era that's coming. Like when we played, you weren't at that one, the Philly show after
Yeah.
Crossroads, they played Turn the Dial. And it was like
Oh,
it was like the biggest song in the set. I mean,
really?
it was a big deal. Like
Yeah.
people love it. And so it's like, I think it's so cool because I think now it's like, I don't even know what's next.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's really like Cresswell can sing on these songs and be like, continue to like become a bigger and bigger part of it all. And
And he doesn't try to be Wallard. And
no,
I think that there would be sort of a natural want to do that, to do justice to him, but then you end up like mimicking him.
yeah.
But he doesn't do that. He's still Chris Creswell.
Well, the other thing that he brings to is, I mean, not to share too much inside baseball, but having Chris Wallard and Chuck Reagan, they're big personality.
Sure.
I mean, that is a combustible.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think that Cresswell neutralizes.
Some of those stories have been told publicly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in I love both of them, and they love one another. So
Right.
it isn't like it's not like bad. I'm just saying the nice thing is Cresswell, I think that this is more sustainable, is what I would say.
Mhm.
Like how he fits in not only with the touring group, but also how he interacts and works with me and works with Wallard and works with everybody. I mean, it's just perfect. I mean, he's got like the best bedside manner, and he's so talented that it isn't like you're gaining something, you're not taking something away.
Every band should have a Canadian that just
I love Canadians. Yes, I kind of agree.
Every band should have a Canadian. They're just so polite and they're nice and they're professional.
Yeah.
There's a few, I mean, I think people will certainly dig the album when they hear it. There's a few I feel like the stylistic differences or the gap is a little wider on this one. The treadless sort of hits like a sledgehammer right from the opening and then actually gets harder. And then the EP ends with the In the Shadow of Who You Thought I Was, that is this really sort of, I think, beautiful sort of melodic song. Was that sort of a conscious decision to kind of open the palette a little more?
Yeah, I think that I don't know. I have always, as I said, like Hello Sun was one of the first songs. It was more like what made us pick these was I felt like this collection of songs together felt like a complete thought and felt like the direction the band is going. It wasn't like, oh, let's get really melodic and let's get really heavy. And I mean, we don't really think like that or when we're writing, but when we're picking what's going to be, it felt like this EP, this record feels like we're starting to stretch out a little bit, and I think the stuff we've continued to write is even more. I mean, I will always have some like fast raging hardcore stuff just because I love it.
It's in your DNA.
It makes my heart beat faster and I love it. But I also love like songwriting and musicality and melody and, things like that. So I love that those two songs in particular can exist on the same record in a way that makes sense. It's not like, it's not like, okay, we're going to have a reggae song and a hip hop song or whatever. I think we're starting to figure like, stretch out and develop like what the sound of Be Well will be,
Is it you've obviously got your own sort of reputation as a producer, but then when you're producing your own band, does your role as a producer change when the band that you're producing is your own or the way that you approach things?
It does. It's much more of a mind fuck.
I can imagine.
You know what I mean? Because the thing about the part of the role of producer is, typically is to be the objective party,
right?
And I honestly think, like, I've actually talked a little bit, like when we make the next full length, I think that I probably would like to, like, I don't know that we would hire a producer per se, but I have talked with Ryan at Black Bear about maybe we go down there just to have like someone you trust that you can bounce ideas off of. I think it really does help. And so, yeah, with the thing is, I think it would have been a lot harder with this Be Well record if we had had to do it in a consolidated amount of time. But because we made it through the pandemic, it was kind of like, it wasn't like the pressure wasn't on. So like some of this stuff would get tracked and then I would be like, listen to it and oh, rework it. And, you know, so kind of like the objectivity came from time. Rather than an outside person. But I think my preference would be next time, you know, go somewhere, kind of work with someone that was like, you know, that I trusted to kind of like say like, what do you think?
Somebody
you know?
that can be the sixth Beatle, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think that Jason actually referred to at one point as either the fifth Beatle or the sixth Beatle, because now Criswell's in the mix. So, but that you sort of need that, because I mean, they had done their own thing with Ryan for a while, but I think that, you know, having that either deciding vote or having the person from outside that can push you in a way that I mean, I think he also said that you could probably push their buttons just as well as they can push their own buttons, except that you like, you're an objective voice and you're not in the mix.
Well, I think one of the things that was fun about Hot Water doing this together again was that like, I'm a super fan, you know, of them as people and as a band. And it was kind of like, I don't want to say I had as a fan, some things I was missing about the band I loved, you know what I mean? It was kind of like, I felt like, and I said this to them, they had kind of like shied away from some of the things that I thought that were like their unfair advantages. You know what I mean? Like, like there are things that they do that no one could even get close to doing, that they just kind of got out of the habit of doing. The dual vocals, all the cool like bass drum rhythms, a lot of the kind of like guitar work being like a little more angular at times and you know, not having everything have to be an overdub, you know, having the main rhythm tracks have a lot of color and vibe and things like that. So it was nice because it was like, I love all the records, but there was like, as time went on, I was kind of like, I wonder if they'll ever, you know, get back to some of the stuff I'm missing. And it was nice to be able to be like, hey, I love your band and let's, you know, let's because often those things they didn't get away from because they didn't like doing them. It's just kind of like you start, you know, going down a path and it's like, and the other thing is, you know, it's hard when you're writing and you know, someone's demoing something in GarageBand and sending, like all those earlier records were made like in the room, you know, jamming. So I felt like I was really happy that it was terrifying when I went down there to Florida at the beginning of the pandemic. I literally had like 2 masks and a face
ground
shield.
Zero.
I had like medical gloves. Because I mean, nobody quite knew what was going on, but I felt like those guys jamming was important. And the thing about them is that I wanted to be there because what will happen is Waller will play some little thing and I'm like, whoa, do that again. And he's like, oh, that, you know, and you're like, you'll miss it if you aren't there. You know what I mean? Like he is this brilliant player, but he'll play things that are brilliant that he doesn't even realize. And so I felt like, and it was really great because we kind of got a couple that, and the first time I went down there, when like listening back to the roughs on the demos on the plane, just like, oh, okay, yeah, this is gonna work. Like we still, you know, we still got it. And you know, it was also cool. Like I've grown a lot since the early days as a writer and producer and all those things, and so have they. And it was really interesting to see like George through all of like, you know, Against Me and Bouncing Souls and all, he's just, his drumming has always been amazing, but he has all these cool like production ideas and harmony ideas. And I mean, it was really cool to kind of like reconnect when we all had grown. And I think I'm really proud of them, because I feel like what they did with Fill the Void is really hard to do. It's really hard to make a record where you're bringing someone completely new in, you're bringing someone that has been kind of like on the fringes for a couple of releases back in, you're bringing this new producer who then has to, you know, bring you this person back who then has to work with the guy that's done the last couple by himself. And you have a new label, you have 2 new labels, you have, you know, and you have some records that were well received but not as well received. And that's a lot of moving parts to be able to like end up with such a focused, meaningful record in the end, you know? So like, I was really proud of them that they never like gave up, you know, like we worked on it for a long time and they kind of never lost sight of where we were going, which was cool.
Yeah. They, if you could say that a band like Hot Water leveled up 30, 25, whatever it is, years into a career, I mean, they did. Not just because of adding Cresswell, but I think all of those things that you just so sort of perfectly encapsulated, they reached another level.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's exciting. I mean, and I think that I'm happy for them. And I also like, I don't know, you know, the thing that's cool about like punk and hardcore, it's like I met those guys in 1994. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's
children
like,
comparatively.
Yeah. And it's just like the fact that like, wow, like 30 years later, almost, we're all still friends. We're all still making music. Like they're taking my band on tour. I mean, it's just
all still alive, which is not for nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you know, I was very honored and, you know, touched, to be quite honest, that they asked me to be involved, you know, and I did not take that responsibility lightly. Like, I mean, I busted my ass on that too, you know, and so I'm glad, I'm really glad that it was so well received.
Does knowing how well received your band has been from not just from fans like where I'm sitting, but from other people in the industry as well, does that sort of inspire you creatively to keep sort of pushing and raising the bar for yourself? Like if all these people sort of get it and dig it, like, boy, I have this responsibility to keep like pushing.
You know, I honestly try and not think about that stuff at all, only because
probably good.
My natural instincts are much better than my brain. So like if I pick up a guitar, typically what I play is pretty cool. And if I pick up the guitar and go, I want to do something like this.
Yeah.
It's terrible. So, I mean, I make with my own stuff and with the bands I'm working with, I make a concerted effort to kind of block out the noise a little bit, because the thing is, it's really easy to go, oh, people love this about us, we need to double down on that.
Right.
Or like, people don't like this about us, so we need to respond by doing this. And then ultimately you're just kind of chasing your own tail a little bit. Like I kind of like, I think like for me, I kind of see Be Well, we don't sound, and what we sing about isn't like Strike Anywhere at all, but I always kind of thought like with Strike Anywhere, it's like they do their thing and it's just it's their thing, and like they are not trying to please anyone, and then people love it, but they aren't like compromising. They're not like responding to what people love or want them to do or anything like that. They're just like comfortable with who they are. And that's what I aspire to be. I actually had this, I think about this all the time, but I've always, I mean, Strike Anywhere has had a wonderful career, but I always thought that they had the potential to be massive band.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I think that Thomas is one of a kind. You know, he's so genuine. He has so much to say. He's an incredible lyric writer, incredible songwriter. And I always thought like they could have been big like Rise Against.
I was just going to use Rise Against as the comparison. Yeah.
So we had this, we were making Strike Anywhere Iron Front. And there were like within like 3 blocks of my studio, there was this like punk vegan coffee shop. And then there was this like super yuppie, eco-friendly coffee shop that sold furniture, you know, kind of whatever.
Yeah.
And I said to Thomas one day, Thomas, I went into the Liquid Earth, the vegan place, and I didn't realize it was vegan. And I asked for half and half, and I got the death stare, like, how dare you even walk in, whatever.
Yeah, right.
So I always went to the yuppie place, even though I'm more punk than I am yuppie, I felt more comfortable over there.
Right.
I said to Thomas, like, do you ever worry that like, having all the tanks and like the communist guy on the cover, like whatever, that some people feel like they're not punk enough to be a Strike Anywhere fan?
Yeah.
And so you're kind of Liquid Earth and Rise Against is kind of Blue House. And he's like, yeah, I think that, but I like being Liquid Earth. And so
that's perfect.
To me, it's like, I don't see Be Well. We're not going to be Thrice where every record is like a whole new record. We're not going to be, Dave Hoss, where we're going to Nashville and hiring these like crazy guys to play, we're just going to do our thing, and we're not trying to get big or, I want people to love the music. I want to connect with people. I want to be able to tour, but our goals are just to make music that we love and be able to so it's, I just try and block that shit out. And I think that, I don't just try and block it out with Be Well. I try and block it out as a producer too, because it's unfair to the songs themselves to let all that bullshit affect them, and people have a lot of opinions, and I don't always know how many people actually like listen to the music. Some, not in the press per se, know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
Like there, I won't say which place, but there was a Be Well review, and I read it, and it was like, this is sunny pop music or something.
Did they listen to the record?
And they hadn't listened to the record. So I said to the publicist, can you look to see if they ever even listened to, and they had never listened to it. So I mean, the thing is,
I can't say that I'm surprised, but
it means a lot to me when people that I respect care about what I'm doing, but I can't have that be the driving force, because it just gets in the way of my brain. And,
well, you done good again, I will say.
Well,
as like I said before, it's tough. It's not every day that you stumble upon a band when you're in your 40s that all of a sudden is like singing about a lot of things that you sort of had in your brain, but didn't know that you had in your brain. And so it kind of unlocks these things. And there are moments on the new album, Only One Wish. I think maybe because you and I both have one kid and it's a daughter, and they're about the same age, that I feel like there's some sort of a little bit of overlap there, but you did it again.
Well, thank you so much.
It's your band is important to me and to a lot of people, but I think your words especially kind of shed light on things that a lot of us have been feeling anyway.
Well,
both good and bad. And sort of like you said before, that maybe there was some darkness to the first one especially, but the point isn't that it's dark. It wasn't dark for dark's sake like Manson was. It was like, it's written from the perspective of having made your way through part of that and processed some of that. And you can kind of put it in its place and call it what it is.
And from the perspective of being a part of a community where I felt comfortable enough saying things that I would have struggled to say to my wife at dinner, and then that
Oh, believe
again,
me, that's
that's the beauty of music. I mean, that is it's just such a powerful thing. Like, how can I, get up there and say in front of 1,000 people what is like really hard for me to say one-on-one, but I'm lucky to have that outlet,
Yeah, and frankly, I think if I'm being honest, your words and some others, I think like Wallard, sometimes like Dave Haas, I think that when you tell somebody you relate to a song and then they listen to the song, they go, "Oh, wait," like like it's sort of like, but like you said, like I wouldn't tell my wife at dinner how I'm feeling necessarily a certain way, but if I'm playing a certain song and she listens to the words, she's like, "Oh," and then it sort of spawns
Yeah.
this whole other either conversation and guilt and a whole other thing. But so that it'll, hi hun, if because she's probably going to listen to this and we'll probably have to talk at dinner once she listens to a couple of the songs on this album.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
I was so psyched that we got to hang in New Jersey, and it's fun. I like this better than the IG live.
Yeah, you know what? Because we didn't know what we didn't know, and I wasn't really using Zoom at that time, and so somebody said do it over IG Live and it'll be fun, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And there was some positive things that
Yeah.
came out of that, but then I think it was Daryl from the Boll Weevils that said, "Can we just do it over Zoom? It's going to be a lot easier." And from that point forward, it was just like, yeah, fine. You know what? It is.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
I have to use Zoom for work, but it's like,
Well,
whatever.
some of these things end up being such good conversations. It's nice to have them archived. You know
Well,
what I
right,
mean?
right. I
So,
accidentally deleted one of them. I had a good conversation with Miguel from Teenage Bottle Rocket and accidentally deleted it, or I closed my
oh,
phone before it saved.
oh my gosh.
Not my funnier moment. Thanks for doing this. I don't
Yeah,
want to
man,
take up
it
too
was
much of
great.
your
Okay.
afternoon. Everybody buy the album. It comes out on May
Yeah.
20th. You can pre-order it. It's on Revelation Records, which is a cool thing because
Yes.
that label such a legacy. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thanks for doing this.